Hey folks, today on the Prior Transformation, I interview Robert Kiraz, who's the CEO of StudioBinder. StudioBinder is a leading entertainment project management solution that helps production companies and brands better plan and execute on projects in the cloud. I've known Robert probably about a decade at this point, and this is another one of those time capsule style interviews. I think we recorded it, I don't know, maybe two and a half years ago or so. And at the time, he was just starting StudioBinder. So you'll hear me introduce him as the CEO of Leanometry, which was a dev shop that he was running that was focused on lean startup principles. And what he did is he applied those principles to his own product, which was StudioBinder, and has since then grown StudioBinder to be a bigger company and a thriving company. They actually did an acquisition last year, so they've grown quite a bit. So these things do work, building MVPs and those type of things. And Robert tells you how to do it and tells you the best practices to do it in his podcast. We also talk about raising funding versus bootstrapping. We talk about his contrarian and actually a perspective I agree on, which is starting a company with your significant other. I think his wife is his co-founder, both on Leanometry and StudioBinder, and it's worked incredibly well. So he talks about that quite a bit. So this is a really great conversation. Hope you guys like it. Let's get started. Welcome to the Prior Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Smoots. In this podcast, we explore, actually, there's no we, it's just I. I'm the only person here. And really, I just ramble for 2 or 3 minutes on a technology or business topic. And occasionally, I'll interview some smart folks. If you like that kind of thing, enjoy. Welcome back. I'm here with Robert Kiraz, who's the co-founder and CEO of Leanometry. Robert, thanks for hopping on the show today.
Glad to be here.
Robert, I'd love to hear just about the origin story behind Leanometry, why it came to be and what you guys are going after.
Sure. Leanometry is a web development agency that I co-founded back in 2013. And it came about because prior to Leanometry, I was working on a startup. I was one of the founders and the CEO of a company in the video streaming space called VOKLE. And between 2008 and 2012, I worked at VOKLE and learned quite a lot about, lean startup practices, what works, what doesn't work. And this is back before lean startups was ever a term, a phrase anyone repeated. So after selling VOKLE, I created Leanometry. I co-founded it with, actually. And our goal was to bring a lot of those lean startup principles to clients. And our clients range from, entrepreneurs all the way up through large companies looking to kind of diversify their offerings. And so we just kind of introduced a lot of those concepts of, validation, and we would ask kind of tougher questions about, have you actually looked into this? Have you actually researched any of this stuff?
Have you thought about this at all?
Yeah, this is probably not a good idea. Are you sure you want to do this? And so that, but it was great because it gave us a chance to experience a lot of different products, which a lot of entrepreneurs don't experience unless they work at an agency. So we got to we got to work on a lot of different projects and notice the things that worked, what didn't work. We got pretty good at picking out the ideas or the products that we would build, which we would then hand back to the client, and we'd kind of be able to pick out the ones that would succeed or fail. Because we saw the patterns of success and failure by working on a lot of different projects. And coming out of that, we said, you know what? Why don't we create our own stuff? All of our backgrounds are in startups, and we've worked in helping other people create their own startup tech. Let's kind of build our own. So we started incubating our own ideas at Leanometry. And, the term is, eat your own dog food, which I hate that term, by the way. It's like the most demeaning term. But we ate the dog food. And we validated all of those ideas that we incubated at Leanometry. And one of them really showed a lot of promise, which was kind of random, but it was a project called StudioBinder, which is a video project management solution for the film and TV world. That one showed a lot of promise, and so we decided to pursue that. So these days, I'm kind of hovering between Leanometry and StudioBinder, which is taken off and kind of developing its own life.
Got it. Now, I know you, so if I remember correctly, you raised some funding for VOKLE, right?
Yeah.
And then and Leanometry is completely self-funded, bootstrapped. You're just
Correct.
So I'd love to kind of just hear about your observations about the different scenarios there.
Oh, okay. Well, fundraising sucks. I think everyone pretty much says that. It's the worst thing you could possibly do. It takes you away from what you want to do. And it can be a really stressful experience because you're basically at that, I'm kind of outspoken about this, but you're basically working for other people as soon as you do that. You're working for those shareholders, and it takes you away from the things that brought you to the project. And it's a perpetual thing where if you raise a round, most likely you're going to have to raise another round and another one and another one. So it puts you on a course of perpetual fundraising, potentially, in most cases. Sometimes people raise around and say, "Oh, that's it. We're done. We're profitable. We're not going to do it anymore." But generally, VCs or investors really don't like that idea because they want you to grow as quickly as possible, which means get you indebted as much as possible and deeper down the rabbit hole. Don't get me wrong. The fundraising has a time and a place, and I think it's best when after you validated an idea and you're profitable and you know exactly how to scale the business, and then there's no questions about the direction of the company. It's more about what to do. You've proven it. You have the revenue. You have the users. You have the growth. Now it's a matter of just raising some capital and turbocharging it. But so often entrepreneurs raise a lot of money early, and that's what we did with VOKLE. We raised money super early. I like that. We raised a seed round, and which I do appreciate, and it was great that we were able to do that. But it put us on a different kind of path versus bootstrapping it. And I think we probably would have learned more, but maybe more effective if we bootstrapped it. But there's also a lot that we learned because we raised a round. So at the end of the day, you're learning no matter what you do. So you can't fail. So
why do you think entrepreneurs early on end up raising a lot of money? What's the motivation? Is it like an ego thing? Is it having that sense of validation? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's different for everyone. For some people, I can see maybe the validation aspect. Once you raise around, it's like, oh yeah, we've made it. Now we have gas in the tank.
Now you have all these guys.
We got a TechCrunch article. We're done.
Just the beginning.
Yeah. And then there's some people where it just genuinely is necessary. And there's some technologies out there that maybe hardware, software plays where it really is an important factor, and that they should raise those rounds. I don't know. For everyone, it's different. But what I go back to is this: raise the round if you decide to raise or go down the pathway of raising a series of rounds of funding. Just make sure you validate your idea first, and you have some sort of actionable a strategy that works, that's already in place, and customers already in place, because then there is this alignment with whoever comes in to invest in you, because they know that you've done your homework and you know what you're doing, so the capital can be allocated properly. When you raise it too soon, and if it's your first company especially, you're probably going to mismanage that money anyway, and then you'll have to go raise some more money, and it's just this never-ending kind of cycle. But I don't know in the case of I don't think it's just one thing, like why people raise money, but certainly there's a lot of hype and buzz. I think that a lot of people, entrepreneurs, are susceptible to.
I think it's true as well.
Yeah, it's sexy to raise a big round.
Yeah, it's always cool to be. You have those cocktail parties, and it's always cool to be like, oh yeah, I just raised 3 at 5, and just talk about that kind of shit. It's all bullshit, right? But,
yeah.
It's interesting. Okay, so just talking about the MVP for a second. I know that's like a big thing for you guys. There's a lot of buzz out there about the MVP and what's an MVP, what's not an MVP, etc. What's the definition for you guys? Like, how do you guys think about MVP at Leanometry or with StudioBinder?
Well, I guess the more traditional definition of MVP is, or minimum viable product is, it's the smallest product that you could build that's going to give you maximum learning. That's what is kind of the textbook definition of it. My opinion on it has changed over the years. I think that, there's only you can only get so far validating an idea with a really minute, primitive application. And if you build something that you may not get traction if you build something so basic and so, I mean, frankly, unappealing to a customer, that you might say, oh, well, this is invalidated.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no potential here. Oh, yeah. I did my homework. I built something crappy, and guess what? Nobody wants it.
Yeah.
But maybe if you put a little bit more effort into it, not a crazy amount of effort, and I'm not advocating going to stealth mode for 12 months. But maybe you should go into stealth mode for 2 months or 1 month. Maybe it's okay to do that, because if it means you have something simple but yet refined enough that has enough value in order to validate. So I think in a lot of ways, some people misunderstand what an MVP is. They think, well, I'm going to just build something crappy as quickly as possible so that I can see if this has legs or not. And I think sometimes it's just self-destructive, in the way that they approach it. I think at the end of the day, you have to build something valuable. And if it's so minimum and it's not delightful in any way to use, you may end up tainting the data that you get. And you might confuse that with it being invalidated when in reality, it was poorly executed upon.
Yep.
So my recommendation for an MVP is just, make sure what is the core functionality that defines this application. Like if you had to pick one, maybe 2 features, and that's it, that makes this special. Okay, what is that? And then once you know what that is and you know who the customer is that cares about that, then basically you can build a really simple but functional and well-executed, well-crafted, beautifully crafted application around that core feature, which is enough to actually, for people to say, you know what, I love this, I love the design, I love the feel, I love the feature, I wish it had XYZ. So people need to get the vision of where you're going. And if your product is so primitive that they're not going to bother, what I found is that they often don't bother actually wanting to think about it. They'll just close out that tab before giving you any bit of feedback. So it can't be so minimum.
Got it. I think that makes sense. I actually had a conversation, I want to say a couple of weeks ago with some folks about, single page MVPs, like the landing site style, you drive traffic to it.
Yeah.
And I got in this argument. I was like, well, that doesn't really tell you much, because if you can get a few signups, maybe that's correct. Maybe you just got lucky. Like you have to be running enough ad money to realistically understand, if that is statistically significant.
Right.
And even in that case, you still could have got lucky, right? And then the other side of it is assume, maybe you didn't get the response that you wanted. Yeah. Does that mean it's invalid, or does that mean that you need to change your headline copy, or does that mean that you need to change your background color, or your design just sucks, or it's like all of these things are go into these to converting people. And if you're just using that basic smokescreen test as your first step, I kind of feel like it's not enough.
Yeah,
and I get this argument all the time with people.
No, I totally agree. I mean, you're right. Sometimes people are just too eager to invalidate ideas. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, don't work. Okay, well, look at me. I'm so sophisticated.
I'm an entrepreneur.
And then 5 years later, they still have nothing. They're still proofing landing pages,
Yeah.
So it's like, so what we did at Leanometry for StudioBinder is, so I'll tell you a little bit about kind of how we validated it.
Yep.
So from a kind of a practical sense, we had this idea. We said, we want to build basically project management for producers and studios and agencies, better project management. And this came, by the way, out of my experience as my background in filmmaking. So I kind of knew about the industry. I knew how crummy the applications are. So wanted to build a better system, right? So what we said is, before we build anything, let's put up a landing page, but let's not go for a crappy little Optimizely, or what's the one? Unbounce. I'm sorry. Unbounce page. We actually did it like a legit polished looking landing page, and it had actual mock-ups of a product. Of course, the product did not exist, but we had beautifully designed mock-ups of what the application is going to look like. So for all intents and purposes, it looked like a real product, right?
Yep.
And it was a pre-launch. It was saying coming soon. And so once we had the landing page, we also said, let's invest a little bit more. Again, we don't want to go so minimum with our MVP that it's not appealing. We said, let's make a really compelling video hyping up the product. So we had one of these not an explainer video. It was more like those sandwich videos.
Yep. It's actually really good, by the way. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah. That's cool. And we shot the video and we put the video on the page, and so it looked like a real product. after we had this page done, nobody was on it, of course. So we thought, well, let's market it, right? So we went out to really popular blogs in the film space and said, hey, we have a product that could be coming soon. And here's the video, here's the website, here's images of the product. What do you think? Would you like to cover it? And actually, they said, oh, this is awesome. Yeah, our readers would love this. And so they actually mentioned StudioBinder coming soon, and they featured it. Guess what? Within 3 days of those articles coming, actually, it was really only 2 articles, we had over 5,000 people signed up on our beta list.
Wow.
5,000.
Yeah, that's actually like demand to me. Yeah.
Most of it was actually in the first day.
Wow.
So at that point, we're like, oh crap, now we got to actually build it, because there's some. But we're like, this is a great problem to have. But here's the catch: if, for example, before I say that, at this point the product looks pretty validated. I mean, at least enough to pursue further.
Yep.
What would have happened if we didn't have the video? Or if we didn't have mock-ups of a product, or if it looked like total crap, and if it was just a bunch of random generic icons, and then we called it a landing page, what would happen if we took that crappy landing page to those sites, and those sites looked at us like we're completely illegitimate? Would we have gotten those articles? Would we have built up the buzz? Maybe at that point we would have been like, oh yeah, this concept is totally invalidated. No one's into it. So execution matters in the validation. And that's what I've come to the conclusion of. And a lot of people who say lean startup, I think have mistaken it for cheap startup.
Yeah.
Cheap startup.
Yeah, you have to spend the money on it. You got to invest the time.
Yeah.
And one other interesting thing I just pulled out of that story is it's not like the lean startup ended for you guys at just building the landing page. You went all the way through to distribution, and you tried to find press that would write about it, and you reached out and that kind of thing.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people do that. I think they put a site up, maybe they run some ad traffic to it. Unless they're an expert on running ad campaigns, like that doesn't really tell you much because maybe you just screwed the ad campaign up.
Sure.
So I like how you guys really thought through the distribution and everything on that. That's great. So just kind of thinking about this, MVP like lean concept, where else can this be applied, within the business or within life, not necessarily with products, but can it be applied outside of that?
Oh, I think so, because I think at its core, it's an antithesis to overthinking, So lean startups are all about taking action and then with the goal of gathering data. So there's a lot of people who might want to, in my opinion, think a little too much about doing something and don't do enough, or don't take enough action to achieve anything, or their goals or dreams. So I think the takeaway is, just get out of your head. In the lean startup world, they say get out of the room, and because the data is out there, it's not in the conference room or the boardroom, and like anything in life, it's just about getting out there. And I mean, you could meet people in the real world versus going in a corner somewhere in the office and just thinking about maybe doing something. So it's like, to me, the concepts can be applied pretty much to anything. It's just about getting out there and taking action, even if it's not perfect. In the case of StudioBinder, we didn't even have a product, but we acted like we did. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah.
So it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at some point.
Yeah, I think that's the key too, is realizing it doesn't have to be perfect. You have to spend time and effort on it, but it doesn't have to be absolutely. Yeah. It's going to be missing something, and that's fine, right? It doesn't have to have everything, but it still has to have some kind of surprise and delight, some kind of joy or something there that attracts people. Anyway, that's great. So I just want to kind of shift gears for a second and talk more about you. Just for a second. So, why entrepreneurship? I mean, why not, be a dog trainer and, be like Cesar Millan or something?
That would probably be more fun sometimes,
Probably most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time, yeah. I don't know. I never really thought about what brought me into startups. I mean, I had this idea for a startup back in like 2007, but I was on a different track with filmmaking. So I really was not prepared for that transition at all. If I think back to it, I had no idea. I didn't study entrepreneurship in school. I didn't read up on anything really. I didn't know. I didn't know about the industry. But I did. But the one, I guess, through line for me, if I compare it to filmmaking, is the act of creating something and working with a team to achieve something. I mean, in a lot of ways, filmmaking is similar to startups. You get a small group,
Yep.
initially a small group of people together who believe in this vision for something that does not exist, an IP, and that everyone gets around. And then that's kind of your core team, and then you kind of expand from there. So for me, it was just another thing to create. But yeah, no, I learned a lot as I went along, and I made pretty much every mistake imaginable, especially in the first year. It was just a train wreck of management.
Let's just talk about the biggest mistake. Maybe we can just pluck out the largest. I know we're supposed to be talking about you, but that's just so juicy.
Oh, really?
What's the biggest mistake you'd say you made?
Oh man, biggest mistake. I don't know if it's the biggest mistake, but probably one of the larger mistakes I made early on was not doing enough research on anything. Yeah, research on anything. So, like for example, my role was the CEO. Did I read enough about what goes into management? No. Did I go seek a mentor? No. Was I prepared for the job? No. And because of that, I made a lot of mistakes as I went along. Did I have a better understanding of how to scope out products and design things and how to prioritize roadmaps? No. So I think oftentimes a lot of entrepreneurs just kind of dive in and assume it's pretty easy, or it's like, oh yeah, I got this idea. I just met this person at this mixer. He's going to code this thing for me.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, we're going to crank this baby out in like 3 months, raise like $5 million after
Kill
that.
it. Unicorn.
Yeah. Unicorn all the way. So, and honestly, I kind of was thinking that when I started. So that might be like shameful of me to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say probably I could have done a lot more research early on. And look, our initial product took us nine months in stealth mode to build, and we threw it away about 3 weeks later after launch.
Wow! Yeah.
And then we rebuilt everything. Did we need to spend 9 months building something we threw away? Probably not. So that was a pretty big mistake. We did go through too much capital, and we learned from that. But God,
this is really interesting because you say that it took you guys that much time to build your first product, and now you're it's almost like you're trying to help others avoid that same pitfall. So it's like you've taken that like learning and that major stumble, and you've made that into a strength, which is really amazing if you think about it.
The irony is that most entrepreneurs don't want to hear that. So when I'm trying to help and say, look, you should probably do this, this, and this, they want to believe the fantasy more than the practical advice. Yeah. What I've learned is that it's really hard to mentor someone that is not open to mentorship.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how many times we even had some clients come through Leanometry where I'm like, maybe you should do this, or this instead, just to validate. And they were just like, they looked at me like I was a dream killer or something.
Cut the check.
Yeah.
Write the code.
Just shut up and build it, And I'm like, and I said, no, I can't, because like the worst thing in the world is even if we're getting paid to work on something that isn't going to just fail. So it's not good for us at Leanometry. It's not good for the entrepreneur. So what would happen is we'd part ways because we weren't in alignment. And then I would see, and there were many cases where I saw this, I would follow up and see how things were going with that entrepreneur, and more often than not, the ideas went nowhere. 404, and it was gone. So I do like to help entrepreneurs, but I've learned that they have to ask for it first. And sometimes some people just will learn through making mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah. You did, right? I did. Yeah. I think everybody does.
They have to. You have to learn.
Yeah.
You have no choice about it.
That's great. Okay, cool. So just talking some more about you, because we keep getting sidetracked. So I know that you started Leanometry with your significant other.
Where is this going?
No, I'd love to kind of just hear what your advice is for folks out there who are considering doing this. If they want to start something with a wife or a girlfriend or something, you guys have been able to do it pretty successfully for how long now?
Since 2013.
Yeah, so like three, almost 4 years. That's a pretty good amount of time to be spending literally 24/7 together. So
yeah,
any tips on how to make that work?
Well, yeah, we've all heard that, never work with friends or family or, close relationships.
Yep.
But if you look at entrepreneurship, oftentimes founders are really close friends and they create companies together, and sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fail. But usually a pretty good idea to work with people you trust. And I think that's the big thing is, the most important thing in any startup, in my opinion, is trust. And if you don't have, and once that's gone, it's gone. It's hard to ever come back from that. At the same time, it's hard to know if you trust someone until you go through the trenches with that person. So trust has to also be earned.
Yeah.
And if it's not earned and worse, it's lost, then it's like, okay, that's a relationship that, you can't continue engaging with. Mm-hmm. So the nice thing about working with people that you do have that trust built up over the years is that, there may be more chance to tough it through, because you know each other, you go back a long ways, and you know each other's intentions and motives are good and pure and all of that. So I think you can go through tougher times with the proviso that basically you're not doing the same tasks, So, my girlfriend, well, now my wife is my co-founder, and I didn't tell you that.
No, wife.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow!
Oh shit!
Wow! You heard it here first, folks. Yeah.
Jimmy heard it here first.
Yeah, I did. Everybody else knows. Yeah. Congratulations!
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah.
Wow.
I guess it was time, and it was.
Wow.
Yeah. So now there you go. It makes the question all the deeper, which is working with a wife.
Yes.
But she's one of the absolute best, one of the best people I know, period. But one of the best engineers I've ever worked with, and I'm not an engineer, so it's like I trust her to do what she does. She trusts me to do what I do, and we don't. We just come. It's like a Venn diagram. We overlap a little bit, but we're not kind of second guessing each other. We trust each other to kind of deliver. I find that sometimes entrepreneurs that overlap too much will clash because they'll second guess each other a little too much. And, like if you're marketing oriented and you have another co-founder who's very marketing oriented, that may lead to some issues, right? Or if you're an engineer and your co-founder's an engineer, you know what I mean? Sometimes it works. So in my experience, I think as long as you have trust built up with the person and you don't overlap too much, so I think it works. Working with friends, family. I've actually worked with my brother on 2 startups now, and we get along fine because we balance each other out, and we know where the other person is coming from, and we trust each other. So even if we're at each other's necks, we kind of, if there's a bad day or whatever, we know the intentions are good. So we'll always get it through. So anyway, I think it's totally possible to work with friends and family.
Got it. Okay, cool. So what's the, just thinking more about the business again, what would you say is the biggest pain point that you're facing these days, like the biggest obstacle that you have to overcome?
With the StudioBinder?
Yeah, StudioBinder, or I'm sure however you want to crack it.
Well, we have an opportunity in the case of StudioBinder, a pretty big one, but we can only move so fast. So we're kind of in a position where we have to either A, raise a round of funding and move faster, or B, accept that things take a little bit longer and continue bootstrapping. And when I say bootstrapping, I mean the company is profitable and we're financially comfortable, but there's a lot more that we want to do and deliver as soon as possible. So do we raise the round or do we not? That's kind of the big kind of thing. And I vacillate between them. But I think that I don't think I would go for fundraising overall, because then that means that there would be many rounds to come, most likely. So we're bootstrapping, and that means that I have to come to terms with, okay, well, we can't do everything. And what I would love, where I would love to be in 3 months might actually take 9 months, and that's okay.
I just want to kind of dig more into that. I think, one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you was, we had a conversation a few weeks ago, and you said something that really stuck out to me about StudioBinder and the business. and that, businesses just take time to get momentum and to gain. You want to just kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, things take time. Business is complex. It's a complex organism, and it takes time to mature. And sometimes you can put a lot of capital into something, and it'll mature faster. But in maturing faster, you might make a lot more mistakes as you go, and you might hemorrhage more money as you go. Whereas if you move slower, it's kind of a slower and steadier process. You'll probably make less mistakes because you're really thinking about how to allocate capital more effectively. The truth is there's something else that I think that most people in the startup space, they're told you got to go fast. You got to grow as quickly as possible, raise money, grow, keep growing. Where is this sentiment coming from? I find that it comes from investors most of the time because they have to show return on their fund. And so then by turn, they have to go and tell the entrepreneur, it's not good enough. You have to grow faster. You're doing okay, but you're not at Twitter or Facebook level here, And so it kind of perpetuates this really, I think, toxic state of mind where whatever you do, no matter how much you're growing, it's not quite good enough because unless you're Facebook, where then it is good enough. But then again, who knows? Maybe Zuckerberg thought for all those years that he wasn't good enough, So we don't know what those conversations are like. But I think that can be pretty toxic because if you are comparing your company to the growth of other companies versus just comparing yourself to yourself, your company to itself. If you compare yourself to a unicorn company, you're going to probably feel like you're coming up short and you're not moving fast enough. And that's going to be hugely detrimental to the ultimate potential or value of the company. I just think that that's kind of a crock of shit. I don't think it's really, if you're building, let's say, a SaaS company, if you build a great product, it takes a little bit longer to build it out, but it's great. It'll still be, I think it'll still be valuable, if you're building maybe a consumer app, it might be a different story because it's all about novelty and brand, penetration there. But if you're building a SaaS company that solves a real problem, if it takes a little bit longer to build out the tool set, but it's all done really great, those customers are still going to presumably be there in a year or two. There's going to be new customers coming into that space constantly who will eventually discover your product when it's full-fledged, and they're going to love it. So your future is bright if you just stay focused on building out your core tool set and building a great company and building a great product. And even if it takes longer to get there, it's okay. Eventually you will get there. And there's going to be new customers searching for solutions all the time, even years from now. And when you are there and you have all the features that you need, I think you can retain those customers with greater ease as time goes on. So I think it's really toxic to feel like you're not growing fast enough. I mean, you're growing as fast as you can with the resources you have. Embrace that and celebrate your success.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's really, I think a lot of times people look at the success of some of these like unicorns, like Slack and different things.
Yeah.
But what you don't realize is like what the story was behind the scenes. You see what's on TechCrunch, you see what's in the press, and you assume these things just without any effort just blew up overnight. Airbnb is a great example of this. Like, I think Airbnb, they toiled on that for like 3 years or something before it even took off.
Yeah.
They had to do a whole other design project to like sustain their life. And then they ended up finally hitting. And then once they hit it, it obviously the trajectory was amazing, but it took time. You had to put that time into it, and you had to figure out what the product was and develop over time. So, so that's great. So we're going to move into a lightning round real quick here, and this is just going to be a few quick questions.
Sure.
And then, just kind of, give me whatever response comes to mind first.
Okay.
So, what is one productivity tool that you use every day?
Trello.
Trello. Okay. That's a good one. Yeah. What's your favorite book?
Running Lean by Ash Maurya.
Okay.
Really practical book. Yeah, for lean startups. Eric Ries's book Lean Startups is a good one, but it tends to be a little theoretical. So if you're looking for more practical, actionable, what to do, Running Lean is a good starting point.
Got it. What do you read on a daily basis?
Feedly, blog posts, really annoying growth hacking articles about increasing.
You actually read those?
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
I click on them and then I'm like, oh shit, this is like way too much. Like,
yeah, how I grew my subscribership by 1,000% by picking this color. Yeah. No, it's mainly like that's what I read because I like actionable things, because I might put some of that into practice. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm.
And then, what product have you come across recently that you thought was just really well executed outside of StudioBinder? You can use that as an example. It could be physical, it could be digital, doesn't matter.
I mean, you mentioned Slack. I think Slack was really well executed, except for their document management, which leaves a lot to be desired. But they nailed like just the text chatting, the emoticons, the bots that the Slack bots that go through there and notifications. I think Slack is just one of these really well executed tools that is transformational. And we use it every day.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. So that's it. Really, that's all the time we had for today. Really do appreciate the few minutes you were able to sit down with us. Any closing thoughts or any information on where people can keep track of you?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Robert Kiraz. It's probably the best way to get in touch.
How do you spell Kiraz?
Kiraz. If you have any questions or anything, or just drop me a line, and happy to chat. And thanks for having me. Closing thoughts? I don't know. If you have an idea, just get out there and do it, and don't think about it too much. But whatever you do it well.
We'll end right on that. Thank you so much, Robert.
Yeah. Thanks.